There's a muscle around here. I know how that's done.
Jay, can you hear me? Okay. We're gonna kick this off here. We're a couple minutes behind schedule. But a couple housekeeping items I wanted to bring up. We have copies of an agenda on the end of this front table here. We have some 3x5s and some pens. In the event you want to write down some questions, comments, etc. We've got this place till 8 p.m. tonight. So we're going to try to stick as close to our schedule as possible. The top three things we got is we have Mr. Yoichi Isu. For those of you from Melania States, may be familiar with him. He did a presentation on a noise survey. And feel free to stand up, walk up with him, we also have some refreshments, some water, some hand food stuff over there. You guys help us out. I wanted to start off just with some words of thanksgiving and some brief here for the life. Dear God, thank you for bringing us all together tonight. Bring us your safety. We ask that you help us out and provide us with your guidance as we go through and share some information. Please, we ask that please everyone be respectful of each other, courteous, and everything will go fine. And most importantly, at the end, please guide everyone back home safely so they can return to their families and find our destinations. So this thing that Jesus Christ. Okay. I also wanted to do a few cursory introductions with some of our plant folks. Some of you may know I am Mike, formerly plant manager at Puna Geothermal Venture. But today, Puna Geothermal Venture's plant manager is Cliff Thompson. Cliff. Our operations manager is Bill Beebe. Our maintenance manager is Abel Costa. Our safety environmental coordinator is Ron Quesada. One of our operations supervisors here, Michael Tumala. And so these are our staff. So if anyone, anytime in between, you have questions for operations or maintenance or safety, environmental, or questions on the plant manager, please feel free to just go introduce yourself. So we have the agenda. The basic protocol is that we will go and take a noise report first, and then after that we will discuss how PGV protects the groundwater. And thirdly and lastly, we will discuss our incident which occurred on March 30th. So we had an opportunity to discuss this a few times, had a debrief with facility fans, and also was able to share from our perspective at the Occupanto this past Saturday. And just FYI, again, there's cards for questions or comments. If we do not get to all the questions and comments tonight, we'll definitely table it, we'll definitely return with our answers. And just FYI, the agenda was essentially made up as a result of our first community meeting, which the top questions came up: noise is one of them, and then protection of the groundwater was the other. Because we had the recent plant upset, we decided to go ahead. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Mr. Yoichi Ebisu. Mr. Ebisu is a acoustical engineer from Honolulu. He has done several different surveys for PGV. Most recently, per the county permit, PGV was required to do a noise survey. And that essentially included gathering data before expansion, and then gathering the data afterwards, and coming up with a report, recommendations, etc. So I'll turn it over to Mr.
Thank you, Mike. So in September of last year, we completed our report. We started in about December of 2010, prior to the installation and operation of the new 10 megawatt plant. We continued the study through the operation of the new plant, and basically made measurements before and after the new plant went into operation. Based on our findings, basically made some recommendations regarding mitigation of the increases in noise levels from the new plant. This is kind of an old-fashioned way of doing it, but as you know, this is the geothermal plant. The original, what we call the pre-existing plant is here. It's about, was rated at about 30 megawatts, now about 27. And the new plant, which went in started operation in June of 2011, is right here. This is the Ilani Estates. And the primary impact zone is right here, the homes immediately south of the station, primarily because they're the closest residents to the new plant. So first, before the new plant came online, we made a lot of measurements of the pre-existing plant, both within the station and in the community at these locations that you may not be able to see, but they're labeled as with site numbers. And these are like short-term measurements. And in addition, we had access to Puna PGV's long-term measurement data from these sites at PGV-A and PGV-B. And these two stations record data continuously, hour by hour. And we looked at that data to give us some idea of what the long-term noise levels were and how they changed with time of day. Then after the new plant came into operations, in about June of 2011, I believe, we made some measurements at the new plant equipment and also repeated our measurements out in the community. And this was to get an idea of what the changes were resulting from the operation of the new plant. In addition, we looked at the same long-term data at PGV-A and PGV-B. Because we concluded that there was an increase in noise level primarily in this region in the order of 1 to 6 decibels. And the noise increases in this region because of the separation distance from the plant, the new plant, were in the order of 1 to 2 decibels. We basically concluded that mitigation measures should be implemented to bring the noise levels in this area and concurrently in this area back to the pre-existing levels before the new plant went in. Not sure if you can see this clearly or not, but this curve basically shows the noise levels from the in this case, the pre-existing plant increasing, going up, versus distance from the center of the pre-existing plant. And we have basically four curves. One, what we call spherical spreading, which is just geometrical spreading of the sound, which basically causes the sound level to decrease in a uniform straight line like this. Then we have another line on which we add onto the spherical spreading the molecular absorption from the atmosphere. Then we have another curve that includes what we call ground effects from shrubbery and grass. Then we have another curve that basically includes, in addition to the others, the effect of thick forest. And then we basically use these curves and plotted measured sound levels from the community onto this curve. We basically concluded that, within 4,000 feet of the plant, we can get fairly good correlation to this curve that describes spherical spreading plus what we call molecular absorption. But as you go beyond that, way into Livania states, the correlation deteriorates because the plant is basically much quieter than background noise levels. So as you get way west into Livania states, the background noise levels are basically keeping the data from following the plant-only noise levels. So these curves are basically used to describe the noise levels from the pre-existing plant, and the same methodology, the same modeling was used to describe the noise levels from the new plant. And then we combine the two predictions to generate the total noise level with the new plant and the pre-existing plant in operation. Based on these measurements, we concluded that this is what the pre-existing plant looked like in terms of noise level versus frequency.
What's the scale on that y-axis?
These are decibels, A-weighted decibels, but they're not the same thing that the same metric that you normally think about in terms of a sound level meter reading. This metric is what we call sound power level. Okay, so it's not sound pressure level, which is what you normally read on a meter. That's why these numbers are so large, because they have to be converted to using a distance factor, as well as that spherical spreading factor and the molecular absorption factor, to bring it down to a decibel reading, like on a meter. So these are what we call reference sound power levels. But it basically shows what the shape of or the frequency content of the energy or the pressure from the plant. Because as you go down in frequency, the power levels are much higher. So this is the old plant, and this is the new plant. These bottom two curves are the new plant. You notice the low frequency levels are much lower for two reasons. One is the plant is not as large. It's 10, 11 megawatts versus 27 or 30 megawatts. But in addition, in the new plant, they have much quieter air-cooled condensers. The condensers are what typically generate the low frequency hum.
Excuse me, does that mean that the new plant is using better technology than the old plant?
For the condensers. But the new plant has a different characteristic from the old plant in the high-pitched frequencies, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 hertz range. It has what they call a bypass technology, where they can bypass the pentane. I might be wrong, I'm not that high on this technology, but they can essentially bypass the pentane gas around the turbine, basically to cut the power down. So they can generate the total 10 megawatts typically during a day, which is this curve, and then they can throttle it down by bypassing the pentane gas, and they essentially generate a higher noise level during the night. And it's because of the bypass valve primarily. Okay. So these are the characteristics of the new plant, and this is the old one. Now, so what that meant was that we had to look at both daytime and nighttime noise levels because we have a different operating system during the day and night. But what confounded, what really caused a problem for us was the fact that at night is when the coqui frogs come out. They start singing after 6, and they continue. They tend to decline, it seems, after about 8 p.m. But they still continue throughout the night and early morning. By 7 a.m. you don't hear them anymore. But their frequency, their noise frequency is all in this range, in addition to the insects and things like that. So we had to look at, remember the PGB hour by hour monitoring sites and A and B, they record data 24 hours a day. And let me see if I can bring up that figure that shows the coqui frogs. This is a record from site B, PGVB, which is more closer to the old geothermal experiment station. This is the onset of the coqui chorus. Which is shown here as 1800 hours, 6 p.m. You see how loud it gets from, and this is in decibels as read on a sound meter. It goes from like 50 up to 60. And before that, before the chorus, this is probably the plant at site B. All right? but continuing past midnight, you notice how it tends to decline, but it's kind of sporadic. And then it kind of ends at about 7, I think, in the morning. And this pattern kind of repeats itself almost every day, but not every day. Almost every day. I don't know why exactly they don't sing on some nights.
Cold.
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 Or
dry.
No more than I. So we have to contend with that. So in looking at averages, pre and post, we kind of restricted ourselves to concentrate on the 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. But again, it's only daytime. So it doesn't include that time when the bypass events are occurring, which are typically, I think, after 11 p.m. till about here to here. That's when the high frequency noise from the new plant is highest.
So it was, the bypass is from about 11 until when?
I'm not exactly sure.
Okay, so when we did the survey, we wanted to make sure we get the most representative worst case. So we did the bypass around 11 to 2 or 3 in the morning. But I think Helco typically keeps us up full load during the time, so it doesn't occur as often as we did the test one.
And so normally you don't have to do the bypass? Is that what
Correct.
you're saying?
Normally we're at pretty much full power.
Much better.
Yeah.
So I'm corrected. So we don't see those events.
But we did the survey so that it would be representative of the noisiest possibility, potential.
Do you guys monitor low frequency noise?
The lowest we go is about 30 or 16 or 12 hertz. I'll get to that issue later. Okay. I know you're interested in that. So we basically concluded that there are a lot of variables here. We have the cookie frog issue, and we have what we call variations in sound level caused by meteorological factors, primarily wind and temperature gradients. In other words, if you're downwind of the plant, there's a tendency for the noise levels to be higher. And if you're upwind, there's a tendency for the noise levels to be lower. So this graph kind of shows that tendency where this is the distance from the plant to the receiver. This is about 4,000 feet. The people that in Hollow Street are approximately in this range from the new plant, and then further out, about 2,000 from the old plant. The people in Leilani are probably in this range. But you can see that I got this. And you this is no increase or decrease in noise. In other words, no thermal gradients, no wind gradients, zero wind, and the air temperature is basically constant when you go from ground to high altitude. That's typically not the case. Typically, you'll have trade winds, so you'll be coming in from the east, so you'll be downwind on the Leilani estate side. Typically at night, primarily, you'll have what they call thermal gradient, which is essentially a temperature inversion where the ground temperatures are lower, where the air near the ground is at a lower temperature than the air at higher elevation. During the day, the thing reverses where your ground is typically warmer than air above it. So under the nighttime condition where you do have cooler air temperatures close into the ground, and they typically come from the drainage winds at the high mountains, the sound will tend to bend downward. In other words, you'll get um, lower attenuation because the sound that typically would go up basically comes back down onto you. So you get lower attenuation. So your excess attenuation is actually negative. So it could range from like maybe five decibels, maybe 7.5 decibels, right? And that could come either from temperature inversion or downwind propagation. This is a combined effect of both. Right? And then if you're in the upwind condition, then you tend to follow this curve where you get additional attenuation. All right. In other words, you won't get amplification, but you'll get actually reduction. And this can also occur typically during the daytime when your ground temperatures are higher than your air temperatures above it, and the sound waves will tend to bend upward. So the sound wave can bend upward due to either upwind propagation or uh, temperature gradients where ground temperatures, the daytime temperature gradients, basically. So this type of variations are real. You know, we measure it, and it makes it more difficult to determine a delta between the old plant and the new plant. So we had to look at the long-term PGV data at sites A and B, and we did histograms of sound levels, uh, histograms of percentage of sound level, percentage of the times the sound exceeded a certain level versus sound level, and we tried to overlay them pre and post, and we could see some uh, differences that we attributed to the new plan. Let me see if I can find that. These figures all come from that report that we generated. If I can't find it. Oh, here they are. This is just an example. There are more than one of them, but it kind of explains what I was trying to say. We have basically two histograms, one represented by the dark bars, bar graph, and the other one represented by the gray bar graph, right? And this is, on this scale is the decibel level that occurred from, say, 44.5 decibel up to about 60 decibel here. So this is a histogram of the occurrence of these sound levels versus how often they occurred, from 0% of the time up to 25% of the time, right? So what a histogram says is that at this level of 46.5 decibels occurred about 23% of the time on this day and this time. Actually, on this month of June 2011, and this is the period from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. This is a non-Koki frog period. Right? And so the gray histogram occurred June 2011, and this is after the new plant came online. The dark histogram are the 31 days of December in 2010, before the new plant came online, at the same time bin from 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. So what I can suspect from this graph is that we got a shift in the statistical distribution of noise levels at this location. Um, and this location is PGVA, one of the long-term monitoring sites at the south side of the plant. And that we got a shift in, or an increase or a shift in average noise levels from the old plant condition, pre-existing plant condition to the new plant plus pre-existing plant condition of about this level, you know, maybe about 3 or 4 decibels. So we had to resort to this kind of analysis to kind of like look through the clutter of the statistical variations due to wind, temperature, as well as background ambient noise levels. But the bottom line is that we basically concluded that there was an increase associated with the new plant. The increase primarily occurred, or the larger increases of 1 to 6 decibels probably are occurring more in the south, the residences south of the plant along the Hinalo Street. And because of that, we looked at 2 options for mitigating it, and one was this wall, 25-foot wall that runs along 3 sides of the existing fence line around that new plant. Hinalo Street is down here. Leilani Estates is on this side. And we, based on our calculations, we believe that a wall this high and which has to be solid will basically bring the noise levels back to pre-existing. We also looked at the possibility of plantings. Remember the forest? And it turns out that it takes about a 600 to 900 foot thick forest, and it would have to be located between the new plant and the Hinalo Street residences. So in here, there's enough room. The trees would have to be 35 feet high. But the primary downside risk on this is that, remember the meteorological factors like the gradients, the temperature and the wind gradients, which can send the sound up and down again. Those will tend to negate, the propagation of 900 feet through the forest that we need, to get the same level of attenuation. So based on that, we decided it would be better to just go with a conventional sound wall. Yes, sir.
I see all the sites there. How many sites do you guys have?
Total number?
I see there's 113.
Let's see. Off station, I have about 14.
14 plants?
14. And on station, there were like 30 or 50 or so. Yes, sir.
So you won't get that same bounce over the wall that you're talking about getting over the forest?
Yeah, the advantage that the wall has is that the obstruction is very close to the source. So the launch angle to get over the wall, these are the sources. This is the new condensers, which are not significant sources, but these are the turbines, which are the significant high frequency sources. Because the wall is relatively close to the sources, to get over the wall, the launch angle has to be really steep, much steeper than going through the forest that's 900 feet away. And so the odds of you getting that same energy coming back down are much lower because the launch angle is much steeper. Yes, sir.
I live right there on originally an old growth rodeo forest. It doesn't block sound well, but was the objective just to get it close to the number of what it used to make? Because that was annoying. What about getting the old number down? What about putting up something around the
Yeah.
generation units that are already there?
Yeah,
Into,
I didn't get into that issue, but one of the driving things about recommending mitigation is because there is a limit that's within their permit, the county permit, and that's a 57 dBA limit. And we're getting very close to exceeding that, particularly during adverse meteorological conditions. And it's for that reason that that we're kind of compelled to say we have to do something.
well, I think I may be where those waves been down. If you guys want to put a sound monitor that goes on a constant basis, rent free, right here. And I'm
Okay.
about a half mile away from, I think, the new one.
There was a lady near this site too. Let's see if I.
You don't have to have.
Right here. She's right here, and they have a med station, I believe, right next to her. But some place close by would be good because it would be the percentage of noise from the plant versus the other.
Well, I think I'm also a good spot to get the gas reading. Based on the measurements that the civil defense guy says, it seems to be an arc out, both with sound and with gases. Because while they were getting a 0 for hydrogen sulfide in the plant, I think they got 2 million. What was it? Two parts per million. And since it's both maybe the right distance and the right lowness and topography, I think it's a good spot to measure both.
Okay. We'll leave that up to
Okay.
PGV. Thank you. Yes, sir.
How big is that site? I mean, what you're talking of your new plant. I mean, how many square feet do you have there?
I got a scale here. The width of the, I'm looking at the fence line, and the width is about 26 feet.
126
No,
feet?
26 feet. 26.
Okay.
26 feet wide. And the long dimension is 48 feet wide. So 26 times 48, whatever.
All right, so with all due respect, could you not enclose that whole unit? Because I know that what is it, Southern California Gas and Electric, they're in Huntington Beach, California. Their whole plant, this is a huge power plant. It takes up almost a half mile of beachfront in Huntington Beach. They have, the whole plant is enclosed with a huge wall that, you know, one of the local artists actually painted a whale scene on. You have the ambient problem of sound bouncing vertically out. I mean, this has been known forever. Now, if your units are that damn small, why don't you just build a structure over them and insulate it? Now, I was in marine, you know, I was a marine engineer in the fishing fleet. One of the things that we had to do was noise abatement, because high-speed diesels can literally kill you if you know, are not protected. If the crew isn't protected, you know, anytime we went in the engine room, we had to wear ear protection, okay? And the fact is, to keep driving the crew nuts, we had to put insulation all through the engine space, you know? And this could be, stuff could be as much as 8 or 10 inches thick of foam, covered with cloth, painted over with, fireproof paints. Point of the matter is, what you need to do is completely encase your units. And I mean, considering the fact that you plop your butt right down there in the midst of 2 subdivisions, I don't know how many farm lots, and the population has increased by about 2/3 in that local area in the past 25 years. Just spend the money and solve your problem as far as noise abatement. Because, I mean, they do it elsewhere, but of course the state of Hawaii doesn't require you people to do anything like that. Basically, you can come in, make as much noise as you want, poison as much as you want to. I mean, again, if you had done it right in the first time, this place had been sited properly, and if you people 25 years ago had actually built your plant correctly, that is, enclosing your units so there is no noise to speak of, we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't be happy for this. At worst, at best, you folks are a nuisance. At worst, you're a disaster. Thank you.
Mr. Beach is done with his formal part of the presentation, so he's open for questions, additional questions. Mr. Beach.
Go ahead.
How much when is the wall going up? How much is it going to cost?
Talk about it.
We don't.
Okay, so the wall is a recommendation, and the noise levels, as you see, the noise levels, the state standard is 70 decibels because it's zone ag. We realize that's way, way too high. So we do our best to stay as low as we can. Someone mentioned about why don't we do something with the original plant. And we do. We have sound walls on the original plant. We have insulation. We have different materials to help reduce the noise. It would be noisier if we didn't do that. But we are planning. We've considered putting in the wall, like Mr. Bisu is recommending in his report. And by the way, the report was a requirement of the county GRP. So this report is also publicly available through the planning department. But we hope to do some preliminary assessment on what the full cost and effect of us will be this year. But we definitely are planning to do our best to reduce noise as much as we can.
Okay, so it's just in planning.
It's just a planning. The report just came out recently, and it was a recommendation, so that's what we're looking at. But Mr. Beach, you come up here then. If it's a plant-related question, I'd be happy to.
I got a plant-related question.
Well, wait, I think this lady and this man
There was a lady in the back.
Okay.
Yes. I feel like he hit the nail right on the head, and I want to hear an answer, because I've been to a lot of these meetings, and I hear a lot of good questions, but I never hear a concrete answer from you guys. And so I'd like it if you could address what you just said, and could you build something around?
Well, let me try to give you some other insight on that approach. And there are a lot of large area noise sources like power plants, sewage treatment plants, et cetera, et cetera. And unlike California, unfortunately, we don't typically enclose them. And the biggest problem, specifically let's look at the new plant. The new plant generates a lot of heat. So you're going to have to ventilate that building or whatever you do. The other thing is that the air-cooled condensers need fresh air to cool just the condenser coils. So you're going to have to move a lot of air through that so-called building. So when you have these openings that you need for ventilation, you also not only have to worry about the structure, the roof, the walls, in terms of the acoustic properties of that, you've got to start putting mufflers in all your ventilation openings, and you also probably will have to add power to drive all the ventilation fans, which in addition to the plant will generate noise. So it's not a clean-cut, easy solution, okay? A wall, on the other hand, is a passive structure. If you only need 20 dB or less attenuation from the structure, the wall can do the job, all right?
But the
So,
wall hasn't been doing the job of the old plant. People are still complaining about the noise, so it doesn't seem like that's really a good solution for
right, but I'm not really addressing the old plan.
Well, I'm trying
But
to.
there might be better ways, to do it. For instance, uh, the likelihood is that most of the complaints about the old plant are related to low frequencies. Am I correct? Okay, if I'm correct on that, and based on the curves of the old plant, the proper way maybe to attack that is not with building a building around the old plant, but to attack the condensers, all right? Are they quieter condensers? Can we put sound treatment on the condenser coils, which we'd have to treat the intake and the discharge ventilation openings as well, but you know, there might be quieter condensers on the next upgrade, something like that. Might be a better, smarter approach.
I
Go
was
ahead.
wondering if you could talk a little bit more about the exact process you use for taking the sound measurements. In other words, is this a time-weighted average from what piece of equipment, or is it a peak? Or just what are you doing to get the numbers that you showed us?
Okay, the numbers that are used, a metric is basically an average. It's an energy average, so it's the average level during the time of the measurement.
Which is
It could vary, okay? For like the PGV data, it's 1 hour average.
a 1 hour average?
Yeah,
for
1
noise
hour.
measurement.
Say again?
A 1 hour average for noise measurement?
That's correct.
You take a peak during that 1 hour?
No, it's just the average value it gets reported.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get is, you know, the peak value which we hear can be many times, you know, orders of magnitude larger than the 1 hour average. Can it not?
Okay, but you've got to be careful what you mean by peak. Okay, there's different metrics. Like there's an average value, there's a maximum value, a minimum value. The peak value is typically used for impulse noise, and that can be way much higher than the average.
And we hear it.
Well, I'm not really sure you hear the peak. Okay, you might be hearing the maximum level, not the peak.
Well, okay, could you give us some idea what the maximum is if you can't give us an idea about the peak?
The maximum level is probably in the order of 5 dB higher. You know, it depends on what the nature of the source is. If it's a steady source, like a plant, it'll tend to be 5 or less. Okay, if it's like a automobile, a transient event, like a car passing by, the average value could be like 30 decibels, 40 decibels. The maximum value, which typically occurs at the closest point of approach, can be like 40 dB higher. Okay, and in that kind of case, that's what you hear, the maximum, or at least that's the one you remember. But when you're looking at steady sources, you know, I'm not sure there's that kind of variation where you can say that you're really listening to the maximum or the average. So, but for transient sources, there is a big distinction between them.
We do seem to get a pile driver type noises out of that plant, and that would suggest that there is a possibility of a maximum or a peak or some higher level that we ought to be knowing something about.
But it might be from other operations at the plant, not the equipment itself, like the turbines and the condensers,
Well,
because they should typically be steady type sources.
well, it may be, but that's what we hear, and
Yeah.
that's our problem, is we hear it all. Okay, and we would like to know a little bit more about some of these peak sources, maximum sources, or whatever.
You can kind of look at that graph I showed that had the R by R variations of the sound levels from PGV A and B. See if I can find that. This is one. I mean, you can see there's a lot of variations day to day. This is days of the month. For August 20, 2010 at Site A. And these are different days of the month, from August 1 to August 7. Each curve represents one day of the month. And these are the hours of the days, of those days. And you can see the variations just on a day-by-day basis. So the noise levels, like you say, is not constant, but the source itself is probably relatively constant, though. So these are probably other noise sources, at the plant, my guess.
Okay, so we'll take one more from Suzanne, and then we'll move on to the next topic. But just so everyone's aware, we have index cards that we can continue to take more questions after as time allows. But Suzanne.
Okay. My question is actually in two parts, and it's primarily to you, Mike, so it's referring to you. So what we heard, or we saw a graph that showed the frequency, not really spectrum, but the noise level over frequency for the original plant, and the highest levels of noise come in at low frequency. We know that none of your permit levels actually pay attention to low frequency noise. It's only dBA, so the low frequency noise is ignored. That's something that you've been hearing a lot from people about, the low frequency noise and it being a problem for us.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if PGV would like to be proactive in addressing the low frequency noise issues. And so I'm suggesting that to you.
Yeah.
And then the other point is, we heard from the speaker that 57 dBA is close to the limit that's written into the GRP. And I'm aware that the GRP has noise levels for night and day, and I believe that the 57 dBA is related to some complicated calculation of exceedances, that you're allowed a certain amount of exceedances over time. It's actually pretty complicated, and as far as I can see, PGV basically ignores that and just speaks to the fact that the state DOH level is 70 dBA, which, as you say, is a ridiculously high level. So what does PGV intend to do about the fact that they're often outside of the GRP, and the levels that not only are written into the permit, but they're also significantly higher than the levels that PGV ever, when they described how they were going to be operating, the current levels are significantly higher than that. We don't seem to have any recourse because the county planning department apparently doesn't seem to care. PGV apparently is ignoring it. So I'd like to respond to that.
Yeah. So the original design and the original criteria of the initial project was we're going to try to meet 55 and 45. But it was apparent that it was a challenge and difficult for the project to meet that criteria.
Using whatever control technology,
At the time.
but not the best available.
Well, we do use the best available, and we do always keep an eye out for new technology that we can implement. I mean, the new plant is an example. The new equipment, less noise generation. We put up insulation. We changed the design of the piping so that the noise reduction can be accomplished. But getting back to the county's noise requirements, the county put that in, but they really didn't have full jurisdiction over it. They don't have no one that even monitors noise. So it's tough for them to enforce, but that's one thing. We always try to mitigate or minimize whatever noise that we're generating. I mean, yeah, we could easily say, well, we're way below 70, we're in compliance, but we don't. So we plan to continue to address noise issues and reduce them to the best of our ability.
I appreciate that you're addressing it. I think what you're hearing from me and from other people is we definitely need to.
Yeah, and I think your first question on the low frequency is more for you.
I was going to answer that question he posed about low frequency. Well, let me just say this, that first of all, I don't think the plant today or yesterday or pre-existing ever exceeded the county's planning commission's 57 dBA.
Originally it was 45.
But the permit basically says 57
That was amended.
average.
The permit was amended. That wasn't the original permit.
Yeah, okay. But the current permit is, they're not in exceedance of the current permits
I believe they are.
requirement. No, I don't think so. Because during the day, they're about, if you look at the PGB A and B data, they're about 48 to 50 decibels. And they're relatively close to the property line, so.
But during the night, that's when the problem really shows up.
Well, it's hard. See, during the night, because of the cookie frog problem, how do you measure? You know,
You can use filters.
you really can't. But if you base it on the fact that we know what the change could be at night due to the worst case 100% bypass condition, even with that, it wouldn't go up to 57 in the worst case areas of Hinalo Street homes. Even with that additional high frequency noise level, it still wouldn't exceed the 57, but they're getting close to it. And when you start looking at the possibilities of meteorological factors, putting them over, it does become a possibility. But right now, I don't think, because of the plan itself that they're exceeding that 57. But about the low frequency issue, I think there might be some misunderstanding of what has come about in this whole arena of low frequencies, okay? So this is a chart that comes from ASHRAE, the people that design air conditioning, ventilation, heating equipment. And they have a curve they call the noise criteria curves, which show increasing noise levels versus decreasing frequencies, all right? From the high frequency region from 1,000 to 4,000 hertz. And this is the definition on their chart. It's not my definition. From 125 to 500 hertz, what we call middle frequency. And low frequency from 63 to 16, all right? Now with my sound level meter, I can read down to 12 hertz. I cannot read below that. Typically, the sound meters are not designed to look in this, what we call the infrasound range. Ultrasound is very high, infrasound is very low. It's not audible sound by any means, all right? But recently, with the advent of wind farms, okay, wind farms which tend to generate a lot of infrasound energy, okay? Not necessarily mid-frequency, high-frequency audible sounds, or even sounds in this band. They generate energy or vibrations, really, way down in this infrasound band. And there have been reports of people reporting nausea, uh, vertigo, and things like that. And they've been attributing that to windmills. All right. But this is a brand new area. It hasn't been substantiated. But there is some recognition in the scientific field that infrasound may indeed be a problem, particularly for windmills. Okay, windmills, to generate real low frequency vibration in that frequency band, you need big monster structures. It's like you need a big bass speaker that has physical dimensions that are equivalent to the wavelengths of the sound energy, the vibration energy that it's generating in the atmosphere.
Something big like a drilling rig, maybe.
Well, the thing has to, a drilling rig is basically large, but the moving parts are relatively small, all right? But with the windmill, the moving part is very large. The windmill rotor is a large thing, so it goes whoosh, 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 whoosh at these low frequencies, and it can efficiently generate low frequencies, all right? The plant itself, I'm talking about the PGB plant. These are measurements of sound levels in decibels, going from the lowest to the highest. And these are meter readings. This is the A weight reading that you hear about. The permit level is at 57 decibels, A weight. And these are the values that are filtered, but are basically occurring in the different frequency bands from 16 hertz to 16,000 hertz. Okay? The important thing about this, and this is one set of measurements at site in the community sites A172, and this is another graph of additional measurements. The thing you should look at in the low frequency range, we're hitting maybe, we measured about 60 decibels, not higher than 65 for both of them, all right? And these are at the community sites, and this is basically plant noise. And in the low frequency region here, it's probably condenser noise. And in the low frequency region, it's probably old plant condenser noise, not new plant condenser noise. Okay, but what do we know about that level of low frequency noise? Going back to the ASHRAE curve or chart, this is, oops, let me show the graph here. This is the same frequency region that we measured, right, in the other graph. These are the kinds of levels we measured down in here, yeah? Typically down here, but some that maybe went above 60. Nothing above 65. Okay, ASHRAE says that if you have sound, and this is indoor sound, that has levels in this grayish area, I call it zone B, then there's a possibility of generating vibrations. You could cause lightweight structures like chipboard or thin plywood panels, and they'll start vibrating. Okay, if you excite it with low frequency sound in this frequency range at these levels. And then if you go above it, above 75 and possibly 79, if you're in this region, the probability increases to very likely that you'll generate vibration. So that's what low frequency does. I mean, it's harder for the human ear to hear sounds in this low frequency region because the ear is essentially desensitized to the low frequencies. And then as you get into the infrasound region where the windmill noise characteristic is, it's almost impossible to hear, but then you start feeling it. Okay, so it's like going into a disco with the low frequency bass cones just moving. I mean, you can actually feel the sound, but, as well as hear it, but you can really start feeling it.
So you don't feel a vibration when you're at the power plant, and I'm wondering about the generators. And like you said, we don't hear it, but I've been to the power plant several times, and I feel a vibration.
Yeah, you cannot feel vibrations in this range. They're occurring too fast. It's like 60 cycle light bulb power line frequency. The lights are actually flickering, but your body and your eyes can't respond to that high frequency.
So what is the vibration that you feel?
What you're feeling is probably a modulation of the envelope of the sound. Remember I said the sound was pretty steady, but you can have conditions where you have maybe two identical or very similar sources and they beat between each other, and you can have what they call modulation, envelope modulation. And that envelope modulation can be, way well below here.
That's what I'm asking. So it's in the range of windmills, the vibration, because you're talking about below 12.
No, but that's a modulated frequency. You need the carrier, you need the high frequency from the engine to generate that. But in the case of infrasound, it's not modulation, it's actually moving the air at that low frequency.
So you're saying the generators don't produce that low frequency?
They don't generate infrasound.
Well, my only question is, have you specifically measured so far the ultra low frequencies? Have you done that?
The only clue that we have, there's a study that you might look at on windmills that was done in the state of Wisconsin, where they had 4 acoustic experts study this whole issue of infrasound health effects that the people were reporting, and they had one proponent for windmills and one against and all that, but they had 4 experts and they looked at the issue and they basically concluded that it was infrasound and that it was basically attributable to the windmill. If you look at these curves which are typical for the plant and typical for things like condensers, that you see they tend to peak at 30 hertz, and by the time it's at 16, it's down. So the trend is down. Okay? If you look at a windmill curve, which I have, the curve looks like this. It doesn't change slope. It just keeps going.
Sir, I asked whether or not you had your equipment.
My equipment cannot measure infrasound.
Okay, well, that's what I'm saying. Have you specifically, at any time at this plant, ever measured infrasound?
No, I can't.
All right, thank you.
Okay, last
Okay,
one.
so what are your plans for measuring that? Because I have felt the low frequency vibrations. I'm really sensitive, and I have felt them up to 3 miles away when you guys are drilling. And if you haven't measured the sound, and this is one of the main things people are complaining about, what is your plan for testing this low vibration?
Okay, so that's exactly why we brought Mr. Bisu here to share on his surveys. And that is something that we will have to follow up on as far as our plans on the low frequency, the infrasound.
Well, every meeting I've come to in the past year has been, you're going to follow up. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm kind of losing my patience because I feel like every meeting I go to, you're just standing there with the microphone, we're not getting any real answers.
Well, that is the real answer. We're going to follow up with the acoustical engineer who's an expert in studying these noises.
But he's telling us his measurement device doesn't go.
Well, then we need to look at other options.
Well, I'm asking, what are those other options?
We don't know right now, but we will follow up. Okay.
Why can't we come to a conclusion at this meeting or at some?
One suggestion.
If you're saying that you feel vibrations 3 miles away, the proper way to address that is probably not to necessarily measure infrasound, but to measure vibrations. In other words, you can measure vibrations in the structure And if the sound levels are high enough, you'll be in that region B and C in the low frequency range. And there'll be measurable vibrations in the structure as well.
Okay, so we're going to move on. We're a little bit behind. We're going to move on to the next topic, Bob. But Mr. Bisu will still be here
My question
for me. I'm going to be here too.
okay, well, I've been trying to get that question out.
Okay, Bob, go ahead.
Okay, so when you say using BACT, you're required to use BAC to meet the permit conditions. That's not overall BACT. Is that right or wrong? When you say using BACT, are you using the BACT best available control technology to meet your permit conditions or overall BACT?
Our plan is overall.
Okay, but so, I mean, obviously we've heard that for drilling, for instance, that they drill in the middle of LA and that they don't have these same noise problems because they have a different technology. So that's kind of like what I'm saying, questioning is, how come if there's VACT that can control these kind of noises and why are you having that problem?
Well,
Sand, this is built on rock.
we implemented, what we felt was the BACT for our projects, and we may not be as low on the noise generations like people would want us to be, but we felt like we were, within our compliance and doing the best we can.
Okay, so, and the reason I'm kind of asking all that is because I was there when we got the permit issued through the planning department, and basically, from a community point of view, we thought we were promised 45 dB at night. And so then the permit was amended to 55 dB at night. So, I mean, just from my point of view, it's a broken promise.
Yeah, I agree with you. There was a promise 55, 45. The project could not meet that. So now we have the new standards.
We have to live with that. I mean,
And we are in compliance.
But you got your permit with the promise, and then you didn't meet it.
Okay, let's, one last from the lady back there. Okay, thanks. I'm gonna go right into the next. Thank you. I'm going into the next topic. If you guys got the agenda, you're gonna need it to follow me, okay? So, the next topic was how do we protect the groundwater? This was something that was brought up at our first meeting, and what I provided is a completion schematic, the construction of a geothermal well. Specifically, this construction is the injection well KS13, which we had the liner problem several months or so ago. Okay, so if you take a look at this diagram, you will see that there's many different layers. And so I provided two different diagrams. The first one is what we normally look at. It's also the diagram that we are familiar with. But to help the process and hopefully help understand, turn to the second diagram. You see that I'm an artist. Okay. So basically on this one, you'll see here's the different color codes on the bottom left. The light green is the geothermal fluid that's flowing inside of that pipe. If you go to the red, that is all the different layers of steel casing that comprises a geothermal well. In between every section of steel casing, steel pipe, is concrete. So we cement in between all of this steel casing. The blue up above is the area of the groundwater. And I'll get back to all of this. The black below the groundwater is what we refer to as the competent or the cap rock. Okay? So let's get back to the depth, which is on the left-hand column. If you look at the very top, the number 700 feet, and if you go to the right, you will see that there's cement and there's red lines on the steel casing, which is 22 inch. So the construction of a geothermal well starts off with the largest section of hole. And in our case, we drill a 48-inch hole. And in the 48-inch hole, we insert steel casing that's 30 inch across. So now you have this space on the outside of the steel casing that's filled with concrete. That's the first section, and it goes down to 100 feet. I mean, if you look at the first drawing, it's clearer on that if you understand these types of drawings. The color-coded one is just to help kind of differentiate the different sizes and the different depths of the casing. So for the groundwater level, the first layer of protection is a 22-inch casing that goes down to 1,000 feet. In our area, the groundwater is at around 700 feet, and if it is potable, a 100-foot lens is like massive. Typically, the fresh water flows from the seawater. That's referred to as the groundwater, the USDW, underground source of drinking water. In our case, we protect that several hundred feet with that first casing, the 22-inch casing. 22-inch casing goes out to 1,000. And this one here is 954 feet. The depths are on the right side. The next section of casing goes down to 2,000 feet. And this is into the very competent or the cap rock. So in between this section of casing, we pump cement again. So now we have cement, we have casing, we have cement, and another set of casing. In addition to that, we go even deeper. We go down to, in this case, 48.55, and that casing size is 11.75 inch. So far, we have cement, we have steel casing, more cement, more steel casing, more cement, and a last section of steel casing. So that's 6 layers of protection for the groundwater. On production wells, that's what you end up with. Now, when you look at an injection well like this diagram, we put in an additional layer of protection, and that's referred to as the hang-down liner. And that's the one that's inside there with the light green in the middle. The light green represents the geothermal fluid that's being re-injected. This hang-down liner provides an additional layer of protection, and it provides an additional ability for our folks to monitor whether we have leaks or not. If you look at the space between the green, okay, there's the two sides where you see white. That white is actually charged up with nitrogen. So the nitrogen pressure is always higher than the geothermal brine pressure. And the reason for that is that we monitor the nitrogen pressure on a continuous basis. If for some reason we lose more than 10% in a specific time period, that's indicative of a leak somewhere. So, if there's a leak somewhere and we're losing nitrogen, the nitrogen can either go out into the formation, but then it could also go inside of this hang-down liner. We prefer the liner to be the failure because it's easier to repair. You pull out the liner and you install a new liner. If it's a leak in one of these casings that goes through the cement or another set of casings, then we're going to have to patch that. I mean, that's a bigger job. And so far, on the injection wells, we have not had any problems with the cemented casing. So far, we've had to change out the liner, I think 3 times. Three different wells throughout the history of the project. The last one was KS13, where the nitrogen pressure was higher than the internal pressure, which is the green, so this liner collapsed. And when it collapsed, nitrogen came back up to the surface and it released through a relief valve. That's where people heard noise during that liner flow. Okay? So, if you look at this, the last layer of cemented casing below the cap rock is 4,000 feet. So everything that's re-injected back goes down 4,000 feet, and it disperses down in the resource reservoir, and ultimately it does migrate back to the production zone and comes back.
I thought you said at Akimono that you guys really aren't sure where it goes. Isn't that what you said? I reviewed the video. I thought that's what you said.
Well, the property is all connected, right? So, I mean, although we don't know exactly where every water molecule goes, it's all connected. If you go 200 feet from an injection well, there's a production well. So, you know, ultimately, it's coming back to the heated sites. We have actually done tests where injection fluids were detected in the production wells within hours. So there are tracer tests that can be done, and that's not good because it'll cool off your production zone much sooner than you really want it to. What you'd like to do ideally is inject in an area where it takes its time to get back to where the production zones are, so it has time to pick up heat and ultimately come back and contribute on the production side. But yeah, I couldn't tell you where every molecule is going.
No, but and the volume is 4.2 million gallons a day.
It's 4.2. It's 3,000
gallons a minute, 180,000 an hour,
whatever the math comes out to. So all of that comes up into the production wells. We use the heat to generate electricity. It's cooled off. It goes back into the injection wells, and ultimately it does migrate back.
Well, now, I'm really concerned actually about the injection because in the mainland, for years they thought that deep well injection was a permanent safe place to put different types of things, oil and gas, even chemicals. And they've found a lot now that that's not necessarily the case, that, you know, that stuff migrates up. And so I'm pretty actually concerned. I'd like to see some testing of the ocean, the nearshore waters, the surface waters at Green Lake, the hot pond, and that areas, and also the aquifers. So, you know, because that's a lot of volume. That's over 1.5 billion gallons a year.
It's the same volume that's coming up.
I understand,
So
but
putting it back on
you're
from where it
putting
came
it down
from.
under pressure, and I just think, you know, that we should, well, go ahead, why don't you ask the question?
No, Bob, no, let me answer what you're saying. We do monitoring. We have monitoring wells, groundwater in our area. We have done extensive groundwater monitoring, Green Lake, Pohoiki, Keone,
Where's that information?
Well, I'm sure we gotta go dig it up, but we submit this to DOH, you know, and same old thing. We've done that, and we still continue to do the wells that we have on. We did what's Malamaki?
All right.
To do Malamaki.
Well, I'd like to see independent, just because, you know, at the same time, you had 0 readings on H2S and 3,000 parts per million from hazmat, so I don't necessarily have a ton of confidence in you. It's the same monitoring people, so I worry about it. I want to see some better monitoring.
I understand.
I want to, you know, if there's nothing going on, then you should want to see better monitoring too.
Yeah, I agree.
Just wondering, if you have the technology, really have the ability to assure these gaps. I mean, it's a nice drawing here certainly, but going down half a mile or more and maintaining this exact space with all these lines, is that doable?
Yeah, we actually do, surveys every year. It's called like a pressure and a temperature survey, and we've also done what's referred to as a multi-finger caliper survey. It's a device on the caliper survey. It's a device that you can go into the pipe, you go down to the bottom. In this case, it would have been like a hang-down liner is 4023 or so. You put this device in, go down there, and pull it all the way up, and it'll record the ID of the pipe. So it'll give you a pretty.
Which is to tell you that you've actually got whatever this is, 2 inches of concrete between these two.
Well, there's other tests that can be done. There's what they call a cement bond rod, and it can actually see what the mechanical integrity of the cement, if it's broken up or not. And same with the pipe, you can actually see the condition. It'll give you data to correlate what the condition of the piping is.
So you're confident that all this hasn't all gone over to one side of the hole or the other?
In addition, we can pump up this nitrogen pressure to a pressure that's higher than we normally see it, and you just watch it. So if the nitrogen pressure stays steady state over a given period of time, it's telling you it's leak free. And nitrogen is a tough gas to keep from leaking by. So if there's a tiny itty bitty leak, nitrogen will find it. Seth?
Would you like to just walk me through the steps of when that most recent, can you talk about it?
I'll repeat it.
When that most recent well casing failure happened, so there was some incident, something happened.
Okay.
Could you walk us through the steps of what you did to
Sure.
address that?
Okay. So every year, once a year, by permit, we need to perform what is called a mechanical integrity test. It's basically to prove the mechanical integrity of this well, that it's not leaking out into the formation. So what that consists of on the white side, we need to increase that pressure about a third higher than we normally run it during normal operation. Because what it does is it depresses the water column that's in here. Okay, because typically the geothermal fluid would come out of here. But the higher pressure you apply on this white side, the lower this water interface will go. Which means it's covering a greater depth to prove mechanical integrity on this whole section, down deeper. Follow me so far?
So normally the nitrogen does not go down that.
Normally it needs to protect to 2,000 feet. Once a year we go down to 3,000 feet.
Okay. And that's what you call the nitrogen annular spacing?
Annular spacing, yeah, nitrogen annular pressure.
Okay. So once a year you pump up the pressure.
To go to 3,000 feet.
And then you monitored that pressure, and at that time you discovered that it wasn't.
When we increase the pressure to correlate to 3,000 feet depth, that pressure was sufficient enough that this liner there was some erosion, and so that pressure actually failed that section that was eroded. So nitrogen being higher pressure, and I'm talking, what is it, 2,000, 1,500 PSI, and normally we are below 500 on the injection side. So because it's higher, because there was a failure in the liner, there was just some erosion, the pressure went into the lower pressure. It didn't go up because it's mechanically sound. The nitrogen went inside of the liner, and because it was 1,000 PSI, it actually came back up to a relief valve that was on the surface.
So that indicated to you that there was some integrity.
The liner is bad.
And that might have happened, been like that for 6 months? Or,
It might have.
Since the last test.
Yeah, so this well was placed in service in 2005. So this is 2000 and... When did it fail? In 12?
2012.
Okay, so that's 7 years. So to give you the other two liners that we experienced failures lasted about the same amount of time, 7 years.
So one of the things we're doing now to prevent that from happening again, because it's not particularly pleasant to have that happen. It's very costly to the facility. It also creates a very loud roar and gets a lot of people spun up. We're doing caliper tests now before we do a pressure test to check the ID of the pipe to make sure it's not wearing away or corroding. So when we know that you do the pressure test, we know that you at least have the structural strength of the pipe.
So you're confident enough with the physical measurements that gives you a clear picture on whether or not there's enough integrity to do the gas?
Pressure test. So how much nitrogen was released? How many inches does it take to fill up Mike? 14 inches. 14 liquid inches of nitrogen, and that equates to how many standard cubic feet roughly, right?
No, I'm just curious, because there was a cloud that drifted all the way through Lonnie Puna Geothermal.
So different.
Huh? No.
Right now?
No, I think when the well failure, when that nitrogen blew out through the relief valve, there was a cloud of nitrogen.
Yeah?
I mean,
Perhaps there was one, Michael was
Yeah,
there.
you get condensation because you got a pressure release from being
It could be condensation in the,
1,500 feet out to
well,
atmosphere.
it had an odor,
But yeah,
In a well.
nitrogen is in there.
Well, I don't wanna have to breathe it, that's for sure. I wouldn't wanna breathe it.
You're breathing a lot of nitrogen right now.
Well, it didn't smell like the stuff that came out of that well.
Okay.
so once you discovered that the well did not have the integrity,
You gotta take it out of service.
so then what happened? What did you do?
Take the well out of service.
So you tighten up some
Well, there's
valves
other
and-
valves you can shut off that isolates the well from geothermal process.
Okay, so you just isolate it. What kind of time scale?
Oh, instantly. I mean, well, take that back. These valves are good size. Strong guys like Mike will take a minute or two. Or
Okay,
something.
but it is basically immediate.
Yeah. And in fact, we had shut off the geothermal fluid or contribution when this actually the failure occurred. So it took even quicker for this particular facility. So that's the mechanical construction and what we do on an annual basis. On a regular basis, continuously monitoring this pressure is the key. Our procedure says that if we lose 5% of the pressure in 10 minutes or so, or 10% in 5 hours, excuse me, that's what it is. We lose 10%, say it's 1,000 psi, and all of a sudden it goes down to 900 in 5 hours. By our permit, we need to do diagnostics to find out why are we losing that much nitrogen. A lot of the times we have small little leaks at the surface, because like I said, nitrogen is, is a very, very tough gas to keep from getting on the little cracks and gaskets and that sort of thing. So that's what we do on a regular basis. Operators are visually checking it at these prices shift, and there's continuous monitoring in the control room, and it's also recorded. So EPA and the state of Hawaii both oversee us on the regulatory side, and I did include their contact information on the next page. So we have redundant oversight from the state level and from the federal level on monitoring and keeping the groundwater safe. So any other questions on
I have
that?
a question.
Yes.
I don't know how to categorize it in your agenda, so I'll just ask it.
Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. The comparison of sulfur dioxide to hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, or confirm it if I'm right. When you have hydrogen sulfide leaks or gases going to the air and there's a rotten egg stink, do you use caustic soda to cover up that stink?
If we release steam like we did recently, we use caustic soda to mitigate and react with the H2S.
Okay, so when you use the caustic soda with the H2S, that changes the, this is a question.
Yeah.
It changes the H2S to sulfur dioxide?
You know, I said that on Saturday, but I was wrong.
Oh, okay, what did you do?
It converts it to sodium sulfide.
Is it a salt?
It's sodium sulfide, and it's aqueous form.
Is
It's
that a
liquid.
salt? I mean,
Yeah, sodium is the chemical.
it concentrates everything.
Into liquid form. Yeah. And it gets captured in a pond that we have, and then we just pump that back into the.
Well, if
Okay,
it,
I have a three-part magic three.
Magic three.
Okay, magic three. Third part of this question, that is open car when you have access to a plant emits hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
Okay, among other things. And the volcanic vents predominantly emit sulfur dioxide.
Correct.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So there won't be any blurring of the source when you have an accident where the effulgence of hydrogen sulfide comes from, in respect to either you or the volcanic vents.
Yeah, most likely, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Which leads us into our next item, which is we wanted to again review the plant upset that we experienced on March 13th. And I wanted to ask our staff folks if you guys wanted to jump in.
Yeah, I was there. So, March 13th, right around 3:58, which consists, we were at 38 megawatts of power full production. The plant was running very well, and making lots of power where we like to see the plant run. Right at that time, Elko experienced a transmission line fault, which took out one of the transmission lines. Everybody should know that we have two transmission lines. One's supposed to be redundant. All the power should be able to go through one, so if one line trips, the other line keeps the power going through it. Unfortunately, there was a breaker setting on Elko's side in substation that read this trip and opened up our other transmission line. At that point, the plant shut down. Within 5-10 seconds after that, our emergency generators came on, so we were never really dark for more than 5 seconds. The wells automatically start shutting in. Whenever we have a trip, we're in hydraulics, so we start shutting in all the production wells. Same time, we open up all the bypasses on the turbines to prevent the turbines from overspeeding. And also it helps get rid of the pressure in the lines faster because we're immediately going back to the air condensers and trying to get rid of the heat out of the system. Due to the running conditions of the facility, we had to release steam. We had to release pressure from the system to keep non-abated releases from happening. So we have a piece of equipment there called an emergency steam relief facility. So it's all automatic. We don't have any control of that. It's all driven off pressures and valves. So it opens up to help relieve the pressure. Okay? When it's going through the 24-inch line, it mixes with caustic soda. Okay? The caustic soda keeps the H2S, the majority of it, 94% of it, in the liquid state. Okay? From there, we release the pressure down to an acceptable limit, shut in the ESRF. In the meantime, within 2 minutes, we had started notifying civil defense and fire department and other state agencies, and Mike also called.
What time was that?
Within, I'd say 2 minutes, 3 minutes, Mike was running over across the street.
3:52?
No.
1600.
Yeah, right around 1600.
Right around 400?
I don't remember the plant tripping at that time or whatever. I looked at the clock. Who knows what that clock was? Not all clocks are synced together.
Oh, no, I just saw it was 350 is what we read. What it said in the paper was it tripped off at 350. That's why.
Yeah. I was in the control room. I was monitoring the facility at the time. I can say the plant reacted very well, very professional, immediately knew what to do. Operations manager and Mike, our senior business director, came over and asked how they could help. I asked Mike to start making phone calls so the plant operators could continue operating and get the plant under control. Bill did the same thing. From there, we went out. Civil defense called us back. They wanted to know if they should send the fire department out. And we're like, sure, that's fine. In the meantime, Ron Casada started going around the facility. And it's true, immediately we didn't read H2S in the facility because it does go up in a plume cloud. And then it drifts back down, and it takes a while.
And when civil defense first called me, he said, "What's the readings on your monitors?" And I told him, "We're not getting anything yet." Okay? So at that time, it was 0. Later on, it started picking up. In pieces. And it just went up. Civil defense came. Fire department was there. The civil defense made their calls. Did text and email. They didn't do the phone system. It was my first experience with that sort of situation here. I was very proud that our staff handled it very well, professional. I was very glad that we did not have an unabated release. That's where we don't abate the H2S. We'd much rather go through an abated system. We got the plant under control quickly. Got it back online as soon as Helco gave us permission. We didn't go around speculating what happened in the press. We didn't try to throw anybody under the bus, back up on top of and blame other people for our issues. We just said it would come out. We met with civil defense a couple days later. A bunch of us, it was like 20, 30. We identified gaps that we're going to mitigate. So, really, what happened?
That's a good question. Is your plant alarm system go off up there?
What do you mean by plant alarm system?
Well, a few years back, I happened to hear it go off. And I immediately started making calls to find out if this is a new employee or a drill or whatever. I know that there used to be one out there, but did you hear the alarm? Did you set one off? Okay, because I asked the other night and was told one was set off.
Well, we have a HMI system, the alarms go off. So we get an alarm system that goes off in cycle control.
But here's what I'm concerned about. Close to my house, they got that high reading of 2 parts per million. And normally you measure this stuff in parts per billion, right? I was given no option. I didn't find out till the next day that an event had even happened. I live right there on the officer. I'm within that half-mile diameter. And I appreciate what you guys do, but there's a difference between you and me living where I do. You get to go home after your shift. I live there 24 hours a day around the clock. And I have no way of knowing if that's an abated, unabated event. I should be the heads up right away. Because you guys are equipped up there with your canaries to let you know to mask up in time. I just want to ask you, if you live where I do, you live in a 3rd-mile radius, and you know the potential, would you want to have a canary and a mask at my house?
I wouldn't want a mask, because I wouldn't want to trust. I think you get a false sense of security with a mask, and you might try to stay around longer than you need to, and then you could get exposed to it. I think it'd be important to leave quickly. And yeah, I would like to know.
Because a lot of people concentrate on low-level releases over a period of time. And I'll tell you what really frightens me. We all live in a place where earthquakes are a reality. And those are impressive pipes and cement rolling and everything. But I'm pretty much guessing that the right movement of the earth or the shifting of that top crust could shear those things right off. And you could have an unabated situation. That scares me more than anything. But first of all, what is the lethal level of hydrogen sulfide?
Yeah, the BLA is
100 parts per million.
Yes.
So we were well below.
Very well below.
But the thing of it is, I've known how the whole thing lined up being in the air. But in the case of an event like that happens, I want my family and myself to be able to make it out. And I don't really think that any plan of civil defense sending out a hazmat area is a very good plan. And I happen to live, because if I was getting a high reading while you guys were getting 0, by the way, what's the highest reading you wound up getting?
19.
19 at our station, 27 on my drone.
And I don't know how long it hangs there. I know it's a heavy gas. But the rain that day, it looked like horrible. Drizzly conditions.
It was a weird, almost no breeze.
Yeah, and they had
day.
come over my house and then he had me on the eye on that line. He goes, yeah, is this the stuff they call log? I'm like, I think this was fall, but I didn't know. And had I been given a choice. And
Yeah, I can say we learned a lot. I know I've only been here for 4 months, and I'm hearing everybody's frustrations. But we do take every one of our situations, whether it's whatever it is, very seriously. We want to learn from it. We know now, after our civil defense meeting, that it'd be pretty darn nice for them to know if there's a bigger one. So we're working on protocols to get that communication out better. Because that's we're trying to.
but I hope it is contemplated ultimately.
I'd say our contemplated ultimate horrible situation would be the blowout that occurred in 91. 91. I would say that would be your baseline.
It was 12 estimates, was 12 parts per million on the perimeter.
You definitely not.
For 31 hours unabated.
Yeah, I would probably go take a drive or something, just be out of the area and wait for the dispatch. But I gotta know.
Yeah.
And if you do have an alarm that's loud enough to be heard, and I know the one I heard a few years back, it was loud enough for me to know something was going on.
That's one of the things, like Cliff alluded to, on improvements with the civil defense.
Yeah.
Communication to the immediate residents is something we need to improve on.
And how about telling civil defense a robocall system?
Yes. Yeah.
Civil defense, they're looking for that. The robocalls, they're looking into upgrading their system, their noise system. I know we met with the Leilani group, and they're really pushing for that too. And yeah, we support it. And
Supported the Verizon tower going up in Leilani.
we support that, and we also bring it up to the civil defense people.
The new civil defense administrator, I think, is going to be a very, very good addition to the administration. He's a former fire chief, so he's very familiar with first response and those types of situations. So.
I would like to see you guys do some kind of like, I actually was getting off a plane in New York City, and got the civil defense alert. So maybe you could like work out something with Nixel, is what the police and the civil defense use, where PG&E has like an account or something for all these people within a certain radius. Because a lot of people don't have landlines or cell phones.
No, we don't
You could like subscribe to something if you want to be frequently updated. It would be nice to just get routine thing. I have this friend of mine, she does a security thing, but I have friends that live on Home Depot Road. They're not opposed to it thermal, but they would like to have heads ups. And you could do like, oh, we're going to be drilling today from 8 to 3, and just send out a little alert for people. It would make people feel like they're better neighbors. Segue to your blowout. There is a lot of chatter amongst my community of friends that there might be a possible correlation between the blowout and all the dead fish and cucumbers that we had within about a week. And I was just wondering if you guys kind of have looked at that possibility of the correlation between cocoa and the blowout.
Well, first of
And
all,
fish in Leilani too.
I want to say that I hate the word blowout. It was a controlled release to an abated system. Blowout kind of comes up.
Had it not happened, there would have been a blowout.
I live in Kapoho, and I do love going down to Champagne Pond, and I like to go snorkeling in tide pools. I don't know what killed the fish. They said it was about 30 fish. Yeah, maybe more. They said it could have been more, and all the other fish came in and ate them. That's what fish do. But I don't know. I can't. And you can speculate anything. I don't know. We don't know.
Well.
Right.
And I did, like, where we met.
Yeah, Yeah, I still swim in it.
So
You
what?
know that there's this one particular guy doing somebody climbing
That's a bummer because we actually have fish in our pond at Pine. So,
We have thousands of fish, and we have tilapias. Cliff just
yeah,
put
I
some in
planted
another
tilapias.
pond.
I want to try growing tilapia.
So our fish wasn't affected, but the best thing would be that these fish need to be sent off to be, what do you call it, necropsy or whatever.
How about an analysis of the,
Huh?
you guys don't do an analysis of that, you calling it steam, I'm calling it a chemical release, because it had all of the abatements and whatever
Well,
else.
actually, most of the steam, it goes through a separation system, so it's pretty well pure steam at that point.
Well, then why do our noses burn? I'm standing there next to Ron, my nose burns.
Because of the
for 3 hours.
non-condensable gases.
Okay, so
H2S.
that's not, I don't call that steam. I don't call that steam when my nose burns for 3 hours.
I used the wrong terminology, I apologize, it is not steam.
Well, actually, my
It's
point was,
it's condensated, condensed steam. It's condensated. It's a
my
fluid.
point was that I'd like to see a chemical analysis of what's in that since we're breathing it. And
We have condition 20s, right? Yeah, we can provide that. It won't be a chemical analysis of that specific release, but it will be a chemical
Well,
analysis.
maybe in the future you could tell, if you have a release, you could find a way, because we gotta breathe it, I wanna know what's in it. That's, I think that's reasonable.
I think the best thing is to use like our worst case wells as a baseline.
That would
I
be
would
a good
use the
start.
chemical composition of the brine as the worst case.
So, I live within a mile of the plant, I'm on catchment, we're drinking water from that, catchment. So, you're abating 94% of the H2S, that means 6% is, whatever your composition is going up into the air. And then in addition, the rest of that brine, it has arsenic, it has lead, it has cadmium, it has mercury, and that's all going up, right? And it's landing on our roofs.
Some of it probably is, yes.
So what would you do if you were on catchment and you guys have a release?
I would probably keep using my catchment.
I think DOH.
You're not concerned.
I plan on living in your guys' area.
Yeah.
I'm going to live on the city block. I don't plan on moving away. I like being close to where I work.
So,
I like to be close to my neighbors where I work with.
so my concern is heavy metals. What I'm concerned about is heavy metals in our drinking water. So how do we mitigate that?
Testing the water.
Yeah, gotta test. Do some tests on the catchment
But
water.
it's immeasurable. One event, put in your big tank, I'll bet it's immeasurable.
DOH has done tests in the past, and I don't see why they can't do it again. You know,
I know during HGPA, Don Thomas came out and tested my water. I had high levels of lead in my water for years. They were opening to the atmosphere.
they didn't have reinjection.
Yeah, that was
didn't have
the old
reinjection.
style where they had cooling towers and all that stuff.
No, I mean, really, basically, if there's not a problem, which, you seem to believe there's not a problem, then we should have water tests. Water testing of the catchments would let you off the hook, be in your best interest.
Well, we also have to know what is in the air all the other times too. When it rains, stuff, it collects it too. I mean,
It wasn't perfectly raining that day.
you have to get a baseline, correct? You take a baseline
Wasn't
when
raining
we
that
don't
day, therefore
have an
nothing on the
episode
catchment
or
went
an
in the
event.
tank that day either.
It settled on the roof, and then when it rained, it washed in the tank.
How many parts per million?
I don't know.
We have to.
Bingo.
That's why we need testing.
We have to
Bingo.
talk about
Funding.
Funding.
Yeah, funding.
Maybe the company should do that. Bingo.
Short question, please, sir.
Okay.
Would you please repeat for me?
Like,
Nobody
we don't
captured
heckle
Brian
yet.
yet.
I could arrange for heckling.
No, we don't want to heckle you.
Please don't.
No, we won't.
I respect the dignity.
When you put caustic soda in the H2S, what do you get?
Sodium,
What?
sodium,
Yeah.
sulfide. Arthritis.
What's the symbol for it?
Sodium is Na, big N, small a.
Yeah, I got it.
Sulfide is a big S with the 2 or something like that.
Which?
SO4. Thank you, sir.
SO4?
Big ass, big old, with sub four. Correct?
So you got one part of sodium and 4 pounds, 4 grams of the molecules.
One molecule has four. Are you asking the wrong?
Okay,
That's okay.
I remember from a meeting last year that fire was lead responder. Was fire the first agency represented out there, and how long did it take for them to get there?
I don't know what the timing was.
I
When
do.
I was with Bob out on the perimeter, they weren't out
20
there
minutes?
yet. So time frame wise,
4:24.
Bob can tell you that.
4:24 fire was on the scene.
So half an hour plus?
Yeah, about 34 minutes. That's what I thought.
No, that was hazmat coming out. Hazmat's coming out of Hilo.
I
The
talked
whole
to
fire
civil
department,
defense.
they got out here fairly quickly. They
talked-
weren't on the perimeter first, but they
They
were in the
came to our
laydown area
location?
prior to us going out on the
Well,
perimeter.
civil defense told me they got there at 4:24.
Yeah, that's the Hilo branch. Hazmat is the guys that go in to
They got
hazardous.
further to come.
They're the
so
ones that
the
took
whole
the readings
fire
that you're
was
talking
Was there
about,
before.
Bob.
Okay.
Okay, so, and fire reports to civil defense.
That's correct.
And then at that point, if in case a foam tree needs to be initiated, that is how it would start. It wouldn't be from somebody within the plant starting to notify anybody.
No, civil defense really doesn't want us to do that.
Okay, so
They want
fire
to be,
would,
they want to be the ones that send out the message.
okay, would it be the PAHOA person, or would they have to wait for hazmat?
I don't,
It- If you look at the pamphlets that's being developed, if we were to provide civil defense with a scenario, like for example, it was an uncontrolled release and it's going to be hours, then I would imagine someone in civil defense would make that call immediately.
Okay.
But if it was something that because when we provided our calls, we said we tripped offline, we're shutting in our wells, and we'll call back when we're secured. So that scenario didn't prompt them to make any decisions right away, but they did make a decision to send hazmat to do survey.
we knew it was going through our data system, so we had confidence that the release would be low.
Well, did you, I guess, I'm still on the same question, did you have confidence in the first rep from fire, which I'm assuming came from the PAHOA station? Was he trained, was he able to make an evaluation to say, yes, you guys did the right thing, or no, you need to do more?
Talking emergency response.
The first-
I'm talking
the
fire,
PAHOA
the first
PAHOA fire.
responder, the lead agency, on any unintentional release.
You know, in a case like that even though, I mean, fire is the first responders, but when they come on our location, they defer to our folks, being the experts, to give them the information. So when the PAHOA guys came on, you talked with them, huh?
Yeah, I went out on the perimeter with them. I came back to the plant after talking with Bob. You know, Bob witnessed one reading, okay, it was right after the upset. Fire department came, I went on the perimeter, they also witnessed a reading, I got a reading of 27 ppb. Okay, hazmat is still on their way.
Yeah.
That was the
Okay.
high, huh, that you got 27. That was the high you got, 27?
That was my high, that's correct. Okay, this was what, probably about half an hour after you had, drive away very fast, right? Okay, so when hazmat came out, which was probably an hour after I was talking with you, when they were on the perimeter going with me, that's where they picked up the high reading.
Okay, so.
But
I don't
then we're
wanna
gonna
talk
finish
about
off
that right
his-
now. I
his
let it
question.
finish. No, I wanna let it finish, but I do wanna talk about that high reading.
Yeah, you can talk about it. So, but Jay, the question about whether these guys were competent. So Ron actually takes the fire crews around the plant, at least,
Sure.
yeah, so they have familiarity. They don't have in-depth detailed familiarity like say, Michael has, as an operator supervisor, but Ron, they are familiar, so, they do, like I said, defer to the plant guys to give them good information.
Sure, I mean, it's further commenting that a lot of people are concerned about how quickly they're notified, what the noise was, what the release was, or whatever. that worked appropriately, the HOA showed up.
Oh, Pahoa was there fairly quickly. They were waiting on, down at the laydown area. I communicated with them, we went right on the perimeter.
So it was good response from our perspective. Couple more.
Okay,
Couple.
all right. Just interesting to me because, I'm sorry I get a little bit tight with you guys, but see, when I was working at sea, we lived with the plant. We didn't go home at night, okay? We didn't go home at night. And the fact is, that it's been like 30 years, almost 30 years to get to the point we are now on this plant, of this development in our community. And the interesting thing is that, you know what, I think you guys would have been far along if you had to sleep, next to your generator sets, next to your condensers, next to all your machinery. You actually had to be within 40 feet, maybe at best 90 feet away. I mean, I don't feel this company has ever done serious noise abatement because the point is, and I don't think they've ever done any serious thing to negate some of the negative aspects in our community because the fact is that you still haven't got it right after 20 years. 20 years. All right? I mean, the reason I get hot with you guys is because, I in my professional career never had any slack. You can't throw buckets of BS to the sea and expect to survive. That's where, I come from. And I'm sorry that I get hot with you guys, but you guys just haven't done it. And that's just the way it is. If we did what you did, I would have been dead. I was 25 years in the trade. I would have been dead 20 years ago if I did what you people did.
Thank you.
Just move to Leilani, lower Leilani, but I have two questions. One, you have any parakeets?
Birds. We have a dog.
We have fish, we have cardinals, we have chickens,
Chickens, a lot of chickens.
a lot of cardinals, we have dogs.
Miners, they used to take parakeets.
Canary.
Canary.
Should I tell them about the dog?
And another thing, if there is a catastrophic event like happened in 1991, is there a siren that can notify? Because no one on top of the tide even knew about the incident on March 13th until a couple days later.
If we were to have another repeat, we don't plan to, like 1991, besides our alarm, we have several Texas alarm.
You'll hear it.
Oh, yeah, you hear the.
We're talking about
We won't run. Our job to make
Well,
sure.
in our eyes, Joyce, that was a controlled plant upset, which we responded to. I mean, we have emergency procedures, we have the emergency response plan, that our guys adhere to. So that incident did not trigger sounding the alarms right away, and that's why it did not get sounded that day.
We have an argument with that. We want alarms sounded whenever you have a controlled release, all the way up to an unabated. We want to know when it happens, right now. So we can have the option. I'm very sensitive. I didn't know it happened. We drove back from Hilo that night around 8 o'clock, driving past the plant, driving down a windy road. I had a headache and my sinuses blocked out.
Okay.
We need to know when it happens. And we understand the technicalities of you don't have to da-da-da by law. But
No,
by morality, let us know when it happens.
That is,
We
what
want to work with the
mentioned.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
We do. All right?
I'm 3.5 miles up to you. This lady here says she can't hear you. I hear you at night. You wake me up.
That's definitely one thing we said we're gonna work with civil defense to improve on, communication. Oh, Cliff, you pick them.
Well, this gentleman here's been asking for, waiting for a while, so.
John.
John.
Well, a couple of things. Sorry.
Well, I wanna hear you.
The 100 parts per million figure that you're throwing around is your limit.
Well, that's an ocean limit. That's an ocean limit.
Exactly, that's an ocean limit, that is not, per se, for an infant, small child, someone with respiratory condition. A general community, that is not a general community limit, that is an OSHA, that is a workplace limit.
Right.
A person over the age of 16 and in good health exposed for no more than 8 hours. I know you understand. That's the OSHA standard.
That has nothing to do with 8 hours.
It says so in the book.
Not the ideal age.
The book I got said 8 hours.
Not for ideal age.
Okay, we'll argue about the number of hours. But it is a workplace environment, not a community environment. Do we agree on that? Yeah, we
Yes, it
agree on
is.
that.
It's an issue.
Okay, aside from that issue, in 1991, after the blowout, the Environmental Protection Agency issued an emergency response plan to you and the county of Hawaii, which has never been implemented.
Well, that's not true, John.
Yes, it is true.
We have an emergency response plan.
You have an emergency
Okay, then
response
let
plan.
everybody know that we have
Your
one.
plan.
Please.
For you.
Your
PGB.
plan. Your plan.
Right.
We don't.
Right, okay.
We don't. We do not have an emergency response plan. You have an emergency response
Yes,
plan.
right.
Okay, we got that part straight.
Perfect.
Okay.
Not
So-
perfect, but yes.
You have an emergency response plan. We do not. Neither you nor the county nor the health department has implemented the plan that was drafted by the EPA.
Well,
I
the
know
E-
this for a fact because the last civil defense chief had never seen the document until I delivered one to him.
Well,
I mean, the point being that we have been thrown overboard here.
okay.
The standards that you're using are not community-based standards, they're workplace standards. And then there's just the basic concept of keep your shit off my property. Is there any part of that that you have difficulty understanding? If you keep it on your side of the fence, we're happy campers.
Do you use
That's
it?
all. It's pretty simple.
So you're off the grid then?
Oh, yeah, I am. Been on the grid for 10 years.
All right, everybody, thank you very much for coming out. Hey, yeah, it's over. 15. You can still stay.
Yes. Of course.
Excuse me, what comment did you make to me? What did you say to me?
You didn't add anything positive to this meeting with your guffaws and your rolling your eyes and saying shit about people.
I don't have to. Okay?
You don't have to add to this meeting? Are you married to
I'm
him?
here for.
You're a spouse, a support, right?
No. I'm
I
here
don't
to
know
listen
what
to
you
what's
are.
going on.
Okay,
but
you're a
don't-
neighbor.
You're not. You shouldn't tell me what I can do.
You're disruptive.
I don't care. Everybody else
You're
is.
disruptive and
Everybody else is. I'm
bitchy.
just gonna tell you. Don't even tell me that.
Do you really
I'm
think
telling
you're the
you, don't
first
tell me that.
person to ever tell me that? Shocker.
I may not be the first, but I'll tell you right now.
Sweetie!
We didn't get too much in your way.
I don't care.
You are fine, baby.
Gotta talk to Sativa. Yo, that's Carrie's angle. Then she sat down.
Well,
You can
here and
have,
there.
you can have if you want. You can suck